I am particularly excited about this session because I think we've been talking about really, really important things all day, all kinds of important concepts and ideas about how a lot of the crises we face are very systemic. But so far we haven't really heard yet from, I think every generation has done an amazing time, but we haven't really heard maybe from the generation that is going to be carrying this forward the next 50, 100 years, because we might live that long. So it is my great honor to introduce Vance and Nia Mitchell, both undergraduate students here at UCSB. Vance is a vegan, feminist, intersectional justice activist here who is majoring in global studies. She is currently the co-chair of the Student Commission on Racial Equality and an intern for Food and Water Watch. Her activism focuses on racial equity, environmental justice, and animal rights, seeking to look at the topic of justice through a wide lens that includes both humans and non-human animals, as well as the planet. And Nia Mitchell is the Environmental Justice Chair for the Environmental Affairs Board, as well as Political Chair for UCSB's Black Student Union. She'll be graduating in spring as an interdisciplinary major in whose environmental studies, Black studies, and anthropology concentrations have actualized an environmental justice emphasis. Her studies of activism come from a love, hope, and commitment to the collective liberation of marginalized and oppressed communities of flora, fauna, and humans. Without any further ado, I'm turning the stage over to them.
Hey y'all, my name's Unique.
I'm Nia. We want to start this off with two things. One, thanking the Next Systems teach-in and Emily Williams for helping organize all of this. And secondly, by recognizing that this is Chumash land that we're on and that we're all settlers in this space.
Cool. Yeah, we'll give our presentation. We're up here as students who are still in the process of learning, but definitely want y'all input at the end, like have more discussion based, not just us up here talking at y'all. So yeah, just listen and then yeah, we can discuss.
Cool. So it's titled The Ecology of Racism. And the goals of our presentation are to highlight stink-sation violence via the prison industrial complex and how that's connected to environmental racism and just like how that kind of birthed a lot of different social movements.
Okay, awesome. So I guess very quickly, I'm pretty sure people in here already have like a background on kind of the history of the United States and kind of not the whitewash history that we pretty much all learn like in school, but more the true history of how the country was founded, what it was founded on, and how that impacts what's happening today. So as we know, like the United States was, it's a settler colonial state that was founded on a genocide of Native peoples and on the enslavement of Black people. It is a white supremacist state that was founded on, again, the supremacy of white people, with Black people being on the bottom. Is kind of racial hierarchy of oppression and exploitation. And of course, our economic system is capitalism, and it's linked to slavery, it's linked to genocide, and it's linked to this kind of ever-growing exploitation of people and the planet that has been going on for hundreds of years. And that really, of course, needs to be dismantled. That's why we're here today.
Yeah, it's really important to recognize that like this system of capitalism was created out of what you can kind of call environmental racism because the genocide of Native peoples allowed for the enslavement of Africans to produce cotton in the States, but sugar in the Caribbean, both that became monocrops pretty much, and we know how that deteriorates the soil. And so it was really the system that stripped the soil of nutrients and the people of worth.
And just some background, oftentimes when we talk about, or when you think about mainstream environmentalism and that kind of whole concept very whitewashed, Black people, people of color are often left out of the conversation around wilderness and this idea of going out into nature and like enjoying it, or what does wilderness mean to Black people? And over time in the United States, it has meant different things. Of course, first coming here as enslaved people, there is an alien land that you're forced to work on because of the skills you have, like your native homelands. But eventually, for many Black people, it became a sanctuary, a form of like escape from the daily brutalities of like slavery and white supremacy. People could go try to escape to the north, or where they can go and like practice like their religion or their spirituality, kind of in the confines of their own community without kind of the white gaze looking upon them.
Yeah, just a lot of Negro spirituals, like Wade in the Water, a lot of these things were created in the wilderness.
Yes, but unfortunately, like after slavery, especially during like Reconstruction and that time from forward on there, the wilderness became this kind of idea of fear, because that was where, you know, you go into the forest, like the woods, and you can get like lynched, or you can be murdered, or any one of those type of things. So wilderness, Black people began distancing themselves from like the wilderness, and it would continue whitewashed by like mainstream kind of narratives into this like, oh, let's create national parks, let's do this and that, oh, let's go hiking, it's very nice and all that, but really erasing the history of what was this wilderness before settlers, and what actually, how it connects to Black people in history. I guess also just quickly before we move on, also, keep in mind how the system of slavery and the plantation system, how it actually changed the physical land of the South, especially when it came to monocrops, when it came to actually pushing the Native peoples off of their land, when it came to deforesting the land, and when it came to and how that impacted the people who then were first to live on there. So those are just some quotes we have on the bottom from Black people after slavery and their different relationships to the land. I can read one of the quotes. This one says, "To go with my wife and 3 children on Sunday afternoon into the woods, where we can live for a while near the heart of nature, where no one can disturb or vex us, surrounded by pure air, the trees, the shrubbery, the flowers, and the sweet fragrance that springs from 100 plants, enjoying the chirp of the crickets and the songs of the birds. This is solid rest. I, as often as possible, like to touch nature, and not something that is artificial or imitation, but the real thing." And I'm gonna read the last quote too, to kind of just oppose kind of the different feelings that many Black people had with wilderness. So this is Booker T. Washington, and he goes on to say that, "I was always frightened. The woods were said to be full of soldiers who had deserted the army, and I have been told that the first thing a deserter did to a Negro boy when he found him alone was cut off his ears." So kind of like this love of nature and like the purity it can kind of represent, but also the fear of like violence that can be enacted upon you for being Black.
Right. So all of these notions are connected because of this idea of space. And really what happened in the wilderness was, in particular, was the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. And that's when you see this rise in the police state. It's that whenever a Black person was like attempting to achieve freedom and would flee, the Fugitive Slave Act stated that white people, whether overseers or whatever, could capture these runaway slaves and bring them back and sell them in the South. And now this is really important because this is how you get police officers today. This is the patrolling of Black bodies for profit. And yeah, and so you have the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850, and then you get this Emancipation Proclamation, 1863, right? Lincoln freed us, we got money, like everything's fine. It's not really the reality of the situation. Pretty much what happened is that the 13th Amendment has a caveat in which it says that Black people are free and like neither slavery, here, can you hold it for me? Thank you. So neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. What this literally means is that in the United States Constitution, you are free unless you are convicted of a crime. Then you are relegated to slave. That's what your category is. And you can see that by the mere fact that ex-convicts today don't have the right to vote, which is the same thing that slaves didn't have. And there's like millions of other comparisons that you can make. And so this Emancipation Proclamation like really brought up a lot of different policing tactics and was the rise of the prison system in the United States today.
And I'm about to kind of connect this is just a continuing history. None of these really are separate from one another, like the state of Black people from slavery until Reconstruction and after. We can bring into the examples connected to environmental racism of the incidents of like the destruction of Black communities, of Black families, of Black homes, and just some kind of more known examples, which are still not known by many people, are the examples of the Tulsa Massacre, which is often called the Tulsa Race Riot, but I don't use those words because that kind of insinuates that there's some kind of like equal fight among like Black and white people, when in reality it was a massacre by white people of Black people in Tulsa because of racism. So it was a massacre, and this happened in 1921. And just a little background: Tulsa was known as the Black Wall Street, and it was the wealthiest Black community in the United States. They had hospitals, doctors, our own schools, own banks, all that really awesome, own self-functioning community that was very wealthy and very very prosperous. But all of it was burned to the ground by white rioters who attacked the city. They killed a lot of Black civilians and destroyed all those businesses, the churches, and all of that in a matter of days, and nothing was done about it. And also the example of Rosewood is very similar, where this Black town in 1923 was also destroyed by kind of like this jealous neighboring white town on the basis of a lie told by a white woman that a Black man had sexually assaulted her, and that turned out to be false. But they still continue to proceed to destroy the town, to lynch many Black folk. And that's just like a historical example of American terrorism, of violence enacted upon Black communities when they tried to kind of enact their own self-governance, own like independence that is often pushed back upon by with violence. And this is two examples of a long history of the destruction of like Black communities and the devaluing of Black lives.
Okay, so they did this through these like massacres, right, where they killed like all of our all the things that we created, but they also had like legalized methods of doing this, and this goes hand in hand with the creation of the prison system. There were these things called black codes and convict leasing. So black codes were laws that the government made up post-Emancipation Proclamation that created loitering, that created vagrancy laws, all these things to relegate Black people back to this idea, back to this category of slavery of via the convict. So basically, a Black person was considered to be a vagrant if unemployed and without permanent residence. So they could be like arrested and fined, and then if you couldn't pay the fine because you didn't have a job, then you were convicted of the crime, and then you could go back into this, then you were relegated to being in prison. And then you had convict leasing, which is where ex-plantation owners, overseers, could lease out prisoners for about $25,000 a year and then make them work the land all over again, exactly how they did during slavery. This is most notably seen in the Angola State Prison that still worked like alive and well today in Louisiana. And it's when a plantation, the literal slave units became prison cells. And then the people that were in those prison cells got convicted of crimes, and then through convict leasing they were forced to till the land all over again. So it just like all kind of comes full circle, and this is all an attempt to stop what Uniqua was talking about, which was Black Reconstruction. And so this is all connected to institutionalized racism and poverty, because it's all about space and how they put you in certain categories that is spatial, but also like literal places that you take up. So what happened is that, or what happened, yeah. Sorry, I'm getting a little nervous right now. But so in the North, during the Great Migration, all this stuff, when Black people were trying to buy homes, purchase homes, which is like this huge American dream, this is how like you hand down your legacy, this is how you bring, like maintain wealth. in your family, there was the creation of the FHA, which is the Federal Housing Association. And this is during the New Deal. And you hear all these great things about the New Deal, how it helped all these people, was really to like get people to be able to survive the Depression. Well, it did, just not for Black people or for any other othered community. The FHA literally followed or created these things called redlining, where they would not give Black people loans. White people could get loans like that, but what would happen is that you would be like in fear of integrating a white community because you had all these mobs and stuff happening, so you were all relegated to a certain space. And then when this redlining thing is, so you see this map, right? There was like, I can't remember if it's A through D or if it's like 1 through 4, like the numbers that they would use, but basically like 1 would mean that you would qualify for a loan, like really easily if that's the space that you wanted to build your house. But Black people only their locations were all like said to be D, and it was literally those red lines, like all those red lines became Ds. So you could not buy houses, and if you did, it was through like this like broker, this middleman who was really just like exploiting your money. And it was like pretty much you were a renter. You had all the like downfalls of being a renter, but none of the like pluses of owning a home. And so this is what like structural disenfranchisement looks like. Like this was the creation of the Black ghetto and the creation of like collective poverty, because Black people were literally not allowed to like engage in wealth accumulation. Like it was completely exited out. Which I just think is like really important to recognize when you're talking about like our current condition right now and why we're in the places that we're in and we take the spaces up that we take up. And this also, like in these neighborhoods, you have like the mortality rates are through the roof. Black people have like one of the highest mortality rates, especially malnutrition amongst children, disease, diabetes, hypertension. All of these things are due to having like structural disenfranchisement of food deserts. I know the list goes really on and on. And that creates intergenerational trauma, so especially coupled with the prison system. So you have people that, and it's functioning, the crazy thing is that this shit functions in the same way that slavery functioned. You disrupt the Black family, that's what they did in slavery, that's what they do through the prison system. You have shitty food, that's what they did in slavery, that's what you have now. And so that constant trauma on your body creates like this toxic waste site almost of who you are in a space, which will take us to, yeah.
Awesome, yeah, and kind of going off what Nia was saying, these conditions of like destruction of Black communities that did have wealth were able to create their own like forms of self-governance were destroyed, and then the disenfranchisement of Black people from being able to accumulate wealth through governmental means like housing, like getting loans to actually build communities that were not very poor, that would not become these ghettos that would be dump sites for like toxic waste sites, for landfills, for mining, for coal, for environmental issues, environmental racism like that. So, yeah, and there's some examples. You have our freeways. This is example in New York and LA, where when they would decide what to build freeways, they would look at race and income. And income is like, it's directly linked to race. Like a lot of people say, well, it's a class issue, not just a class issue, as the whole history of the United States is based on kind of disenfranchising people of color from accumulating wealth based upon race. So the two are directly linked to one another. So they would build like freeways through low income, like, or just even middle income, like Black communities, and saying, hey, you know, y'all have to move from here and go somewhere else so we can like develop this land, while bypassing oftentimes white communities. Here we have an example of in North Carolina. This is often described as like the start of the environmental justice movement, where this Black community in Warren County kind of stood up to these dump sites being placed in their community, and they enacted acts of civil disobedience. They got arrested. They protested, and this led to kind of like the first official kind of recognitions of environmental injustice by like the EPA and I guess actual government officials. But of course, going on from there, we still have so many issues. Like, and that's a picture of Flint, the water in Flint, which I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with what's happening there currently, what has been happening with the poisoning of people, low-income people, black people, people of color in Flint, Michigan, and just kind of the valuing of money and saving a couple of dollars over actually poisoning people. And just actually connecting this to this is a long-standing history of people being seen as disposable and not worthy of life, or like who really cares about these communities. They're not really supposed to be here anyway. Yeah, and that's a picture that when we talk about issues of environmental racism, of food insecurity, like our neighbors are actually killing us. Like when you walk outside, you breathe in the air, it's giving you cancer and asthma. The food is giving you cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure. You don't have access to what should be like, I consider like human rights, clean water, food that won't kill you, air that won't kill you, and being specifically targeted by the government and not protected like other communities are protected. It's a huge issue.
Yeah, so basically people got tired of living in these communities and not having access to government help and just like constant oppression. And so you see this rise of social movements in the 60s and the 70s. You have the American Indian movement, you have the Brown Berets, and and the Black Panther Party, and basically this is what we're trying to galvanize today, right? Like this is why we're having this next systems teaching. So we thought it was important to include the survival programs of the Black Panther Party, because what they did was, yes, they took up arms and they were like, okay, well the police is gonna terrorize our community, so we're gonna protect ourselves from that terrorism. Okay, so they took up arms, but aside from that, what they did was actually care for their community and create community. Through the free breakfast programs, they would feed their children to make sure that they were being able to be the most awake when they were, or like completely able when they're getting their education in the morning. There were the People's Free Food Program that was for folks of all ages to get groceries, community health programs, People's Free Ambulance programs, and the list literally goes on. Like you could just type in like survival programs, Black Panther Party, and like it was just amazing the amount of things that they did for their community pending revolution. What they knew was that we need to have community, we need to be able to survive before folks are even able to consider starting a revolution or taking their autonomy or like having self-determination. So when we're doing all this rad shit, you know, we're taking care of ourselves, all this stuff, that scares the living crap out of everyone in American government. Because what it means for Black people to have liberation, it completely contradicts what the United States government is founded on and has created and perpetuates. So they were the biggest terrorist organization. When you like actually think about it, like I used to be like, oh my God, that's so stupid, that's mad disrespectful. But actually it like makes perfect sense. Like if you're fighting for self-determination within the United States, you are fighting against what the United States government like stands for. And so what Nixon did, which is like genius, is that he created this narrative that he learned from the past of the Black criminal through the war on drugs, war on poverty, and the help of the FBI program, COINTELPRO. He was able to, and like his advisors, if you guys like look this up, like Nixon advisors have like come out recently saying that it was quote unquote bullshit, but yeah, so they created these false narratives that were able to imprison like mass amounts of our leaders. They assassinated our leaders. And I just we're gonna play a quick video of Fred Hampton real quick. He was a Black Panther in Chicago. Also my bae. He was like this awesome Black Panther in Chicago, and he's really known for like unifying and creating a lot of solidarity between poor whites, poor Blacks. Oh my God, I gotta stop doing that. Yeah, go ahead.
They're constantly bothering the people. Anybody that's out there for the protection of the people happens to be in direct conflict with them. What makes them mad about it? What makes them mad about it is that they had Black people and white poor people and red poor people and Puerto Rican poor people and Latin American Puerto Rican people of poor people of all descents They had them caught up in movements based on racism when the Black Panther Party stood up and said that we don't care what anybody says. We don't think you fight fire with fire best, we think you fight fire with water best. We're going to fight racism, not with racism, but we're going to fight it with solidarity. We said we're not going to fight capitalism with black capitalism, but we're going to fight it with socialism. We stood up and said we're not going to fight reactionary pigs and reactionary state's attorneys like this and reactionary state's attorneys like Hanrahan with any other reactions on our part. We're going to fight their reactions where all of us people are getting together and have an international proletarian revolution. Right on. Right on.
So basically what he says is that some people function under the notion that you fight fire with fire. We're going to fight fire with water. We're going to fight capitalism, not with black capitalism, but with socialism. Socialism is for the people. And he just goes on, and really, he was threatening because he connected the Crips and the Bloods in Chicago and made them realize that the real enemy were the cops running the streets. He was threatening because he connected poor whites with black movements. He connected Latinos. He connected Asian solidarity. And solidarity, like unity, is power. And so Fred Hampton had a security guard who ended up working for COINTELPRO. They gave the FBI the layout of his apartment, and then they drugged him the night before. His security guard gave him a drink. He took like a little drink, and he got drugged the night before. He was sleeping with his baby and his mother, and the police came, shot up the whole apartment, and then proceeded to walk into the apartment and shoot him just endlessly. And he couldn't even fight for himself because he was drugged up. And so, like, this is the violence of white America. Like, this is a man that was literally trying to achieve freedom, and this is what the United States government is capable of doing. Which I think is like really, really, really important when we're talking about like creating a new system, because he was trying to create a new system. And this is what this is what we're up against, to be completely honest, like a system that's willing to do that. And then everyone knows, like, Angela, you don't have to play Angela, but y'all should look up Angela Davis, Leonard Peltier, and Assata Shakur, all these amazing, and so many more that we don't even know. Yeah.
So we want to give us a brief kind of quickly talk about the Haitian Revolution, because we feel it's really often ignored in history, as opposed to like the American and French Revolution. But to me, it's like the most important and just so powerful that it was actually a story of people really rising up against against oppression, exploitation by people who were murdering them and suppressing them. And it was the only successful slave rebellion in history, where these slaves in Haiti decided they were going to fight for their freedom and fight for their own country, and they weren't going to be slaves anymore. So they rose up and they won against like the overpowering kind of power of the French, and then later United States and Britain would get involved. But it's just to kind of show the power that they had and like just the strength to actually rise up and win.
Yeah. So something that I learned about the Haitian Revolution that like changed my life completely were that these slaves, it said that when the French Navy was pulling up in the port and the slaves were like, okay, it's about to go down. Like the French Navy was like the strongest Navy at the time. It's like what the American government, American military is today, right? Like literally the strongest thing. And these these African descendant slaves from the port, the French were starting to release cannons so that they would like already kind of win the war before they even got there, you know, like that's like a really smart tactic. But the black people straight ran from the port and caught the cannons with their bodies before it was able to touch the land. Sorry, that's crazy. Like that's what they were willing to do. Literally catch cannons with their bodies. Like, I'm free, I'm so free. Like, this cannon is not gonna stop me. And thousands of people did that. And they were able to achieve freedom, but then you get, you know, IMF and like all this like shitty stuff. But still, it's the fact that they were able to do that. And so we thought we should share Assata Shakur's quote with y'all. Do you want to read that?
And as Assata says, nobody in the world, nobody in history has ever gotten their freedom by appealing to the moral sense of the people who were oppressing them. So I don't know, kind of this day and age, I feel like a lot of people are trying to work through the system, like, I don't know, like, let's vote for Hillary or something to, like, really change stuff. But that has been working, obviously. It might slow things down, make things a little bit better, but obviously the system is not working, and trying to appeal to these people who are profiting off of the system, benefiting from it, is not helping us. It's destroying the planet, it's killing people. So, like, we do need a new system. We need to actually think in new ways and stop trying to get little bits and crumbs, like the bare minimum from people when they don't really want our freedom, our liberation. That's really important. And we have a pic down there of Nat Turner, awesome movie coming out. Hopefully it's gonna be awesome. And just even though they didn't win, and he was killed for his act of liberation and rebellion, it's still just a strong symbol of people rising up for their freedom, and people just not taking what was put on them in life. Yeah.
So what does this mean for us today? You know, we're living in this era of like Black Lives Matter movement and just like climate change, climate chaos, really all these things. For me, it means that we need to have an intersectional collective perspective, right? We need to realize that everybody's experience with white supremacy and capitalism is different, but like we're all oppressed in different ways, but it's that same ideology and system in which we are being oppressed. And we have to have commitment. We need to be ready to sacrifice, but most importantly, we need to have love for this movement. And without those three, like without being completely honest with yourself and embodying those three, like we're not gonna succeed. So I just like to remind myself with the Haitian Revolution at the end, like, are you ready to like jump into the cannon, you know, like to see freedom? Yeah. Thank you for your time. Do you want to say thank you too?